Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sip and Spin. My name is Skylar, and over here in a witch's hat is Brittany.
Hello! We are a variety podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and nothing.
Mochi has a lot of feelings.
And cats like to meow.
It's spooky season, and she is feeling it.
It's fine. She's in her vibe. She's my familiar. It's fine.
What about Celeste?
She's also my familiar, but she's bitchier, so, you know. She does it on her times.
She's only your familiar when she wants to be.
Yes, truly. So how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Should think about it a little bit, but
yeah,
it's
just
fine.
a little bit, you know. Past week, working a lot, as always.
Fair enough.
That's typically how it goes here in Skylar's life. It's just work.
I still have a little bit of a cough, so again, I apologize if I any time during, and that wasn't for an example, that was real. So it just timed out that way.
Is it allergies, or are we still recovering from COVID? Who knows?
It's a game at this point.
The world may never know.
Just playing a little game with my life. But yeah, no, I'm fine also.
Good.
Again, it's October. Everything's great.
Everything is better in October.
Which really is. It's like that TikTok audio. Better pizza, better, the Papa Johnson's was like, better bitches, my clothes better, my shoes better. I'm like, that's autumn for me.
Yes. Yeah, because especially my clothes better, my shoes better. I'm like, my fashion sense in the fall is like 10 times better than it will ever be in the summer.
Well, what are we doing this week?
So today we are talking about history.
Yeah, which is a subject you like.
I love history. Now, this week, so last week, as you guys know, was very, it was paranormal, but mine was very history focused. This week was also history, but I have a very short episode. I had more history and paranormal than I do today, but I'm still really excited because I love history and I am pumped.
Hey, I, always have really short segments these days, so that's fair. Mine's longer for me than it has been in a while, so hey guys, I actually did stuff.
I'm so proud of you.
And I actually had quite a bit of fun with my topic.
Yay!
Which, history is not my thing, but this one was just crazy enough for me to be like, I'm in. So, you know, I like a good time. And what are we drinking?
We are drinking another white wine, so I am currently in my element.
Once again.
So we're drinking Bota Box Sauvignon Blanc again, except this week we're doing the breeze, like the low-calorie, light breeze Sauvignon Blanc.
It's Bota with a twist.
Bota with a twist. So we'll see if there's any, taste difference.
Yeah, let's see if we can.
Because we've done the Pinot Grigio breeze before.
But we literally just did the OG of this last week.
Yeah. It's since we did 2 white wines, it's like, okay, well, Brittany picked last week's white wine, and I'll pick this week's. And I was just like, we've already done Pinot Grigio. And then I was like, let's do this Sauvignon Blanc. It's fine.
And now she's losing her shit. So
really, she is fighting those curtains.
If you hear any noises, it's my cat trying to attack me, but it's fine.
Cheers. There is a slight difference.
You know, it's not as flavorful.
Yeah.
Or am I crazy?
I still like it, though. It's still very enjoyable.
It's definitely lighter.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lighter flavor.
This is definitely good for your adult juice in the morning.
Like I said, this is a 10 a.m. wine.
This is a first wake up, forget the coffee, go straight for the wine.
Maybe that's what the Bota Box breeze theme is. It's not lesser calories because for health, it's so that you can drink in the AM
and not hate yourself.
And Bota Box, if that is what you're going for, you should definitely sponsor us because I will live that life for you.
Bota Box, if you're listening, please. We are begging once again.
I will drink. I will wake up and drink for you. Anything else to discuss?
I don't really have anything. Other than, we'll talk about it at the end probably, but, spooky season, so on the YouTube we're going to have more spooky autumn-themed videos coming out.
Yeah,
so please check that out.
Definitely check them out. We also, a couple of weeks ago, had a very chaotic Stardew Valley themed video come out that you guys should probably watch and judge us for.
Oh God, it was. I watched it while I was at work because it was really slow. So
that seems like it's not safe for work content, Skylar.
Yeah, and I sat there and at the register, there's like a little thing, so I just put my phone up and I was just like, "This is fine."
Yeah, it's definitely a little raunchy, so fair warning.
But it was fun. It was super fun. Watching it back, I did have a little laugh. One of my coworkers walked by and I was like watching it and I was like kind of smiling and like laughing to myself, and she was like, she saw my phone. She didn't see what I was watching, but she saw my phone and she's like, "Oh, that makes sense." Because I was like, there's no way you're like happy just standing here while it's this dead. I was like, yeah, you're right.
But I guess we can begin.
Yes. So let's get into some history. What you got?
Okay. So, you know how I said, like, I had a good time. It's a fun time. When I tell you my topic, you might be like, why is that a fun time? So, I'm going to talk about a founding father.
Okay.
And it's not probably any of the ones you're thinking of.
Well, there's like 4.
I'm assuming you think of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, thanks to, Hamilton these days, James Madison, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about any of them. I'm going to talk about a less remembered one who's, like I said, it's so fun because his story is just kind of batshit crazy. I'm going to talk about Gouverneur Morris. His first name is Governor.
Okay.
Like, that is his legit name.
Do
you know him?
No.
Okay, great.
We did not learn about him in AP World History. Or AP US History.
You might understand why.
Well, we were taught about Vlad the Impaler.
But it's actually kind of crazy that people don't know about him because he did do some very significant things, which I think is wild. But then you wonder about, is it the washing of unpleasant things in American history? Which, yes, I think.
That is the prerequisite to being a founding father, is he has to have done some important things.
Right. I mean, but it's so weird when you hear, like, specifically what he did.
Oh, America loves to wash away its own history.
And, like, change it. So it's just wild. Like, we're in for a ride. But so the beginning is going to be very, very history, very technical, kind of boring, like his bringing up. But then his, like, later life, it gets interesting.
Your best bet for the history of America is primary sources from other places.
I thought you were going to say your best bet for history is to listen to us. And I was going to be like, I don't know about that.
No, just talk about how, like, America, we like to change our history, and, like, your best bet for true American history is firsthand accounts from other countries.
Oh, yeah. 100%. We love to just rewrite it. So cute, so fun.
Make us look like the good guys. Oh, yeah, and mistranslations and just making shit up as we go along. Like, it's fine.
Everything's fine. So, Gouverneur Morris was an American statesman, founding father of the U.S., and a signatory to the Articles of Confederation and the U.S. Constitution.
Okay.
He wrote the preamble to the Constitution and has been called the penman of the Constitution.
Okay. Yes.
So that's why I'm like, people don't really know this guy, but he wrote the preamble. Like, that's him. This is this guy. He also advanced the idea of being a citizen of a single union of states. He was also one of the most outspoken opponents of slavery among those who were present at the Constitutional Convention. Jesus.
Good for you.
But yeah, like, apparently this man, he just never shut up. He was known as a person who was always talking about something.
Oh, and he was, against slavery, so I'm sure they wanted to wipe him
and
right
so it's
out.
like, why didn't we not know this guy? Why did I not know this man's name? Because he has a very colorful story. So let's go back. We're going to talk about his upbringing now. Gouverneur Morris was born on January 31st, 1752, on the family estate Morrisania on the north side of the Harlem River, which was then in Westchester County, but is now part of the Bronx, to Lewis Morris Jr., a wealthy landowner and judge, and Sarah Gouverneur. His first name obviously comes from his mother's surname. Her family first moved to Holland and then to New Amsterdam before coming to America. So in both Dutch and French, I mean, obviously governor means governor, but he has the French spelling of governor as his first name. So it's like Gouverneur, however you want to pronounce it, but I'm just going to say Gouverneur Morris. Morris's half-brother, Lewis Morris, was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. A different half-brother, Stotts, S-T-A-A-T-S, I'm just going to say Stotts, Long Morris, was a loyalist major general in the British Army during the American Revolution. His grandfather, Lewis Morris, was the Chief Justice of New York and British Governor of New Jersey. His nephew, Lewis Richard Morris, served in the Vermont Legislature and in the U.S. Congress. His grandnephew, William Meredith, was United States Secretary of the Treasury under Zachary Taylor. So, whole family in a bunch of shit.
Very involved.
Yes. From a young age, Gouverneur Morris was a gifted scholar. At 12 years old, he enrolled at King's College, which is now Columbia University. At 14, he accidentally dropped a kettle of boiling water that scalded his right arm and side of his body, and it was so bad it forced him to miss an entire year of his classes at King's College. Oof. So, like, ouch. Yikes. He did, however, avoid gangrene, which would have required an amputation of his limb. So that was avoided, but
good. That's good. But
still a year of classes. That's a long fucking time.
That's a lot of agony to go through.
Yeah. But he graduated in 1768, and he received a master's degree in 1771. So he's very well learned for the time, obviously. And like I said, he was just known to be really smart, because he was 12 when he went to college. Which I guess maybe wasn't a big deal back then, but sounds impressive at least.
Spencer Reed type shit.
Yeah. He studied law with Judge William Smith and attained admission to the bar in 1775. On May 8th, 1775, he was elected to represent his family in southern Westchester County in the New York Provincial Congress. So as a member of Congress, he concentrated on turning the colony into an independent state. So he was very for that. He wanted, he was very pro, being independent, with each state. So his advocacy of independence, though, brought him into conflict with most of his family. Which, if you remember what one of his brothers was, it makes sense.
Yeah, that checks out.
So it did align him, though, with the brother Lewis, who was one of the ones that signed the Declaration of Independence. But, of course, the Loyalist brother was a no-no. They are not on good terms. Which makes sense. And again, they're all half-siblings. They're not, fully related at all. But also, as well as two of his sisters who married Loyalist. And unfortunately, his mother was also a Loyalist.
That checks out for, it being 1775 before
So really, he only had his one half-brother on his side with his beliefs. In August 1776, after the Battle of Long Island, the British seized New York City. His mother gave his family estate to the British for military use because, again, she was a Loyalist. And this decision left him homeless, and he would not see his mother again for the duration of the war, or really any of his family. Which is sad, but also a good reminder to cut ties with toxic family members, guys. You do what you gotta do for you. From 1777 to 78, Morris was a member of the New York State Assembly. On January 28, 1778, he took his seat in Congress. He was selected to a committee in charge of coordinating reforms of the military with George Washington. After witnessing the army encamped at Valley Forge, he was so appalled by the conditions of the troops that he became the spokesman for the Continental Army in Congress and helped enact substantial reforms in its training, methods, and financing. So he was that guy who was like, nah, this ain't it. We're gonna change this. So again, very outspoken, he's all about change and, moving forward. So again, it's why don't we know this guy?
For his time.
Yeah.
Because he was very progressive for his time.
Exactly. Which is it's so shitty because he's so much more interesting than all the other lame fuckers that we know about. He was the youngest signer of the Articles of Confederation in 1778. Fun fact. So he was a young guy when all this was going on. Also in 1778, Gouverneur Morris cast the decisive tie-breaking vote in favor of keeping Washington as commander-in-chief. So, At the time, the other people were trying to push a no confidence vote in Washington. They were like, this guy ain't it, he's not doing what we want, let's get him out. If it succeeded, Washington would have been court-martialed and dismissed. But Gouverneur Morris's vote was the vote that pushed it to, no, Washington's fine, we're going to keep him. Mm-hmm. So, that's interesting. Of course, he's worked with Washington a lot, they are friends.
Do we know his stance on the two-party system?
We're going to get into more of his later political beliefs, but I never saw anything definitive.
Okay.
Mostly people like to talk about where he fell on slavery is a big topic with him, which was at the time very rare because he was like, slavery, like, you'll see, there's like some quotes, which is still not great, but he was against slavery for what it was at the time. And then being independent and like not with the British. But I did read, I don't think I talked about it too much, he was pretty also classist. So he did think that the poor people weren't on the same level, is what I gathered. But other than that, those are really the only political things that I'm going to talk about.
Gotcha. I just always
Unless
find it interesting,
I'm remembering wrong, because I did these notes a little while ago. But
I just always find it interesting with like people's stance on like the two-party system.
That I don't know. And if I did see it, I didn't write it down. Because I didn't talk about everything about this guy, so if you are just interested, go look it up. But this is one of my longer ones, and I was like, this is too long. I'm talking too much about things. In 1779, he did not win re-election to Congress. So he moved to Pennsylvania to work as a lawyer and a merchant. So he was like, all right, bet, I'm out. I'm going to go be a lawyer because I have this degree in it, and I, did the bar and all that. So he avoided losing a limb when he was 14, right? Mm-hmm. He wasn't so lucky in 1780.
Oh, no.
Which is also why he's fascinating, because, he was disabled. Which, again, probably wouldn't want to talk about that in school.
Yeah, oh, no, a founding father didn't have an arm? Oh, wow.
But
whatever
also,
shall we do?
Let's talk about the reason why.
Okay.
Which is where the stories get so interesting with him, and I'm obsessed. So, the PG highly edited school version of history will tell you that he had a carriage accident that left him with a mangled left ankle and several broken legs. Bones. Broken leg bones, not several broken legs.
I was
Sorry.
like, wait a
I'm
second.
just so excited.
I was like, he only has 2 legs. You can't really have several broken legs.
Did I not tell you he had 4 legs?
No, you neglected
Save the best for last.
You neglected to mention that.
So yeah, several broken leg bones. But this is in fact false, based on many accounts of people from the time that knew him, and there are many documented accounts on him.
He was drunk carriage driving.
Oh, it's better than that.
Okay.
So now's a good time to mention that Morris was a pretty well-known ladies' man.
I was about to say, was he high?
He was just very with the ladies. So what does that have to do with a missing limb? It was forever rumored and now pretty much confirmed that he was sleeping with a married woman, and then her husband caught them, and so to escape the wrath of this very angry husband, he jumped from a balcony, thus mangled his ankle and broke several of his leg bones.
Amazing.
And I'm just like, yes, this is the history I love. I want the dirty secrets of the founding fathers. So the doctor that treated his injury recommended amputation of the left leg below his knee, and Morris consented. After the amputation was already done, either the same doctor or a different one, I'm not entirely sure, was like, oops, probably didn't have to amputate after all. My bad, man. There's a rumor, or like, it's pretty well thought that the doctor knew the sleazy circumstances behind his leg and thought that this is what he deserved. And so they did the amputation.
Oh, shit.
Because he was a scoundrel. And I just love that thought because I could highly see that happening. Amazing.
A leg for sleeping with someone's wife. You've heard of an eye for an eye? That's a leg for sleeping with someone's wife.
Oh, this is funny. So now he has a peg leg. So he's a founding father with a peg leg.
He's a pirate.
Why don't we know about this? So according to Richard Brookhiser, who was an author of, and this is an amazing title, of his book, the gentleman revolutionary Gouverneur Morris, the rake who wrote the Constitution. And if you don't know, rake is a term to describe, quote, a dissolute or immoral person, especially a man who indulges in vices or lacks sexual restraint. They use it a lot in Bridgerton. But yes.
He just called him a whore.
Yeah, so he's a slutty man. And he has a book about him that calls him a slutty man. But according to this author in that book, Morris didn't let his peg leg slow him down at all.
Hell yeah.
It's written that he continued to ride horses, climb church steeples, shoot river rapids, and shake his wooden leg dancing. Nor did it diminish his tryst with married women, so much so that friend John Jay wrote that he wished Morris, quote, had lost something else. So, like, Mance was still getting it, he was still shaking it, he was climbing churches, like, man was wildin'.
I love this for him.
With his peg leg.
This is a good journey.
And I'm like, this is so fun. He's so fun. So, he's in Philadelphia still. So, in Philadelphia, he was appointed Assistant Superintendent of Finance of the U.S., and served under Robert Morris. So it's Gouverneur Morris and Robert Morris. Very confusing. In 1787, he was selected as a Pennsylvania delegate to the Constitutional Convention. So during the convention, he was a friend and ally of Washington because, you know, they knew each other, and others who favored a strong central government. So I guess, you know, there's more politics stuff for him. Although he missed an entire month of the convention, it's said that he spoke more often than any other delegate. It's said that he delivered 173 speeches at the convention, which is a lot of fucking speeches.
Yes.
So, like, in comparison, James Wilson gave 168, and James Madison only gave 161. So he just gave all of them, pretty much. Also,
it's starting to sound a little like me. I don't know how to shut up.
Yeah, like I said, like, this man just talked nonstop. So again, it's like,
he needs a podcast.
It's like, why did no one, like, think he was important enough to talk about? But it's just because of all of his sluttiness.
Yeah, Gouverneur Morris needs a podcast.
And because, you know, he was against slavery. So during this convention, this was when Morris was among the few who stood up and delivered passionate speeches denouncing slavery. So, according to James Madison, who took notes at the convention, Morris spoke openly against slavery on August 8th, 1787, and stated that it was incongruous to say that a slave was both a man and property at the same time. So this is a quote from, I guess, James Madison's writing of it. So he, Morris, never would concur in upholding domestic slavery. It was a nefarious institution. It was the curse of heaven on the states where it prevailed. Compare the free regions of the Middle States, where a rich and noble cultivation marks the prosperity and happiness of the people, with the misery and poverty which overspread the barren waste of Virginia, Maryland, and other states, having slaves. Proceed southwardly, and every step you take through the great regions of slaves presents a desert increasing with the increasing proportion of these wretched beings. Upon what principle is it that the slaves shall be computed in their representation? Are they men? Then make them citizens and let them vote. Are they property? Why then is no other property included? The houses in this city, Philadelphia, are worth more than all the wretched slaves which cover the rice swamps of South Carolina. So that was Madison's notes on Morris's speech, and again, I don't love a lot of the wording.
Yeah, I don't like how he called them wretched.
Yeah.
That's not great.
Like I said, when I said, it's still not great, but he was basically saying, they're men, let them vote. Make them men. And then, even then, if they're, quote, property or whatever, then, why is no other property? He was, calling them out. Why doesn't this apply to your other property if you're claiming these are property? And it was just so yeah, the wording wasn't great, but he was definitely against it. He just was still a white man in the 1700s. So, still not great, but better than a lot of people there.
It's much like last episode when, yeah, Waverly Hills is open to black people, but they still didn't treat them well.
Yeah. I did enjoy at least that he was let them vote. That was interesting to me. And I was okay, so I will include this.
They're fucking people. They should be allowed to vote.
Yes.
And then the stupid, 3/5 rule.
Yeah.
Black men were only 3/5 of a person. How can you sit there and put a fraction?
That doesn't even make sense.
How can you put a fraction on a person's humanness?
You can't, because a person is a person, and
it's ridiculous.
We're dumb. Yeah.
And then they called it a compromise. The 3/5 compromise.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is a good thing. Their vote.
We're so progressive.
Their vote counts as 3/5 of a vote. I'm like,
yeah,
compromise. That's not a fucking compromise. It's still shitty.
Because no one is a human to white men other than white men. Like,
yeah,
not
white men only care about white men. That's it.
Truly. So, according to Madison, Morris felt that the Constitution's purpose was to protect the rights of humanity, which went against promoting slavery. So that was his main thing. Which, that's good, in my opinion, even though he worded it not great, probably still looked down, because, again, I said he was a little bit, as a royalist, where they, look down on lessers.
Classist.
Yeah, but I think they used the term royalist when I was reading about him, so... So even though, he would still probably not treat them well, he did want to protect the rights of all humans. So as a member of the Constitutional Convention's 5-man Committee of Style, Morris polished the final draft of the Constitution. So according to Madison, quote, "The finish given to the style and arrangement of the Constitution fairly belongs to the pen of Mr. Morris." Morris was a gifted writer and was given the title, like I said in the beginning, the penman of the Constitution. His biggest contribution was possibly the preamble from "We the people of the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts," and then they listed all the states, etc. And then he changed it to simply "We the people of the United States." So that was him. He wrote that. In 1789, Morris traveled to Paris on a business venture, and 3 years later, President George Washington appointed him minister to France. So he's in Paris now. And during his 5 years in Paris, he saw the worst violence of the French Revolution, but he was the only diplomat to remain in the city throughout it all. So he stuck it out. On one occasion, when he, quote, "found himself the center of a hostile mob in favor of hanging him on the nearest lamppost, he unfastened his wooden leg, brandished it above his head, and proclaimed himself an American who had lost a limb fighting for liberty." End quote.
Is that what he did?
End quote. Upon which the mob's suspicion melted into cheers. But again, he got that peg leg from adultery. But he spun it around to save his ass, which is so funny. So, how did he spend some of his time in Paris, you ask? He had a 3-year love affair with the novelist Comtesse Adelaide de Flautet, who was married to a count 35 years her senior and lived in an apartment. Where was her apartment? It was inside the fucking Louvre. Before it was the museum. So the man was banging in the Louvre.
I love this.
Amazing.
Goals.
Truly goals.
If I can't have sex in the Louvre, then what am I doing with my life?
Right? The dream. So he shared his mistress with the French diplomat Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, who would later sail the Louisiana Purchase to the United States as Napoleon's foreign minister. So they were just sharing her up in the Louvre in her apartment, and I'm like, great. I love that for you. While Morris was minister to France, the Marquis de Lafayette, who had been an important participant in the American Revolution, this is a very, fans of the Hamilton musical will know Lafayette, because he was my favorite character in that. So he was exiled from France, and his family was imprisoned, and then Thomas Paine, who was also important, was arrested and imprisoned in France. So it said, Morris's efforts on their behalf has been criticized as insufficient during this time. After a change of the French government and after Morris was replaced as minister, his successor, James Monroe, was able to secure Paine's release. So just want to throw that in there, Morris returned to the U.S. in 1798 and was elected in April 1800 as a Federalist to the U.S. Senate. So he served from May 3rd, 1800 to March 3rd, 1803. In 1807, he was appointed to a 3-man commission tasked with planning for the growth of New York City, as it was rapidly becoming the largest city in the United States. This commission devised Manhattan's iconic street grid system with 12 parallel avenues intersected by 155 streets. So basically, he is one of the people who, like, made the layout for New York City and is why it is the way that it is. So he was the city planner, basically, for New York City, which is huge, also, again. Mm-hmm. In 1809...
And also, it, like, makes a lot of sense. Like, New York City's layout makes sense. It's, like...
Yeah, and, like, he was a smart guy, like, but that was, like, his doing, and that was also, like, where he grew up, was, like, in the Bronx and stuff, so, like... But again, it's just, like, he wrote the preamble, he pretty much designed New York City, and it's like, we don't know this name, but maybe now you do. But we're not done with this crazy tale.
Okay, great. I'm ready.
In 1809, Morris decided to hang up his Playboy hat and turned a Christmas party into a surprise party by making the shocking announcement that he had wed his housekeeper, Anne Carey Randolph, who was nicknamed Nancy. She was also 22 years his junior. I don't know why her nickname was Nancy.
Yeah, I'm like, none of those names equal Nancy.
But yeah, Anne Carey Randolph, Nancy.
Sure.
So now, not only was this shocking because of his, his Rake ways, his past, it was also scandalous because Nancy was accused of murdering a baby. So let's backtrack and talk about Nancy for a second.
What? Okay, yes. Let's do this.
So Anne Carey Randolph, or Nancy, was the daughter of Anne Carey and Thomas Mann Randolph Sr. She was the sister of Thomas Mann Randolph Jr. Thomas Mann Randolph Jr. was the husband of Thomas Jefferson's daughter, Martha. Fun fact.
Okay.
So, Nancy lived near Farmville, Virginia, with her sister Judith and Judith's husband, Richard Randolph. It was on a plantation called Bazaar, which...
This whole thing
perfection.
Is bizarre.
Just, like, you can't make this shit up. In April 1793, Richard Randolph and Nancy, so her and her brother-in-law, were accused of murdering a newborn baby who was presumed to be their baby. So, yeah, so she was first accused to have an affair with her brother-in-law, and then that she got pregnant, had his baby, and then they murdered said baby.
By murdered said baby, do you mean like an abortion and murdered said baby, or like the baby was born and then they killed it?
I don't have the deals on that, but I have what she claims later.
Okay.
Coming. Yeah. I don't know the effect to the murder.
Also, for the listeners, when I said abortion murdered, I put quotations around murdered because I don't think abortion is murder.
No, it's not. That's a whole other podcast rant.
But I was just curious, since it is that time, I was like, did she have an abortion and then did they call it murder, or did she have the baby and then kill it?
I mean, I know what she claimed. Let me make sure I wrote what she claimed, otherwise I'll just go ahead and say it, and that might give context. Okay, I guess I didn't say, or maybe I did, and I still have, like, fog brain from COVID. But Nancy's claim the whole time was that it was a miscarriage.
Mm.
So...
So I bet she had, like, an abortion, and they were like, she murdered the baby.
But she was very, like, it was a miscarriage. Like, she was very for that narrative. But then, she was charged with, like, she wasn't charged. We'll see. So Richard, the man, the brother-in-law, stood trial, and he was defended by Patrick Henry and John Marshall, and he did obtain an acquittal for this accusation. So then Richard Randolph died suddenly in 1796. So the brother-in-law just died. The sisters were suspected, but nothing could ever be proven. Which, like, if my husband was accused of having a baby with my sister, like, maybe I would team up with her to murder him, especially if he forced her to have a miscarriage, maybe? You know?
Okay.
Like, maybe I would do a little sister murder.
I was not connecting the dots in the same way you were connecting the dots.
That's where my thought went, because I was like, okay. Maybe he was not a good man. And maybe he raped my sister, you know? That could be a thing. Or maybe they did have a thing, and then he was like, you can't have this baby. Hurt her. She had a miscarriage, but it wasn't a wanted miscarriage. And, like, abortion back then, I don't even know how technical that was, but, like, maybe he just forced the baby to die, and then they both ganged up on him, because I don't know how he died, but it did just say he died suddenly. Like, he probably shouldn't have died. And then they did suspect the sisters, but they could never prove anything about it, so nothing happened to them. They were fine. So I don't know. That's where my brain went. I was like, okay, so maybe he was a bastard.
See, my brain went to, like, oh, she was having an affair with her brother-in-law, and, like, when she got pregnant, she was like, oh, shit, that's a problem, and decided to get rid of the baby.
I just don't like men. So...
And I was just like, if she had an abortion, because I was thinking it was like, she had a willing abortion because she did not want this baby.
And I don't know how often that happened back then, truly, so I don't know. But my mind was just like, I don't like this man. So, I don't know.
I mean, any man who cheats on their wife is not a good man.
Ooh, spicy.
We know who I'm talking about right now.
Oh, we all know.
It's very topical.
It is. So that's where I was just like, maybe because I think I did these notes when that happened. So I was like, oh, he fucking sucks.
I literally texted Brittany and I was like, sorry, we can't record this week. Like, Ned Fulmer ruined my life. I'm so mad.
Fuck him.
He was always my least favorite anyways.
Oh, yeah. I didn't like his anger.
Like, I could never, like, if you asked me, like, oh, who's your favorite try guy? I could never answer. But if you asked me who my least favorite try guy was, Ned, easily.
Bet. 100. So, yeah, so nothing ever could be proven. The sisters were fine. Nancy remained at Bazaar Plantation after the death, but Judith, her sister, did ask her to leave in 1805. So something happened, or at least... like her husband died in 1796, and then in 1805, for whatever reason, Judith did ask Nancy to, like, leave. So Nancy traveled north and lived in Connecticut before she agreed in 1809 to work as a housekeeper for Gouverneur Morris, who she knew from other instances, apparently, is what people claim. So that would make sense if, like, given his character, like, maybe they hooked up in the past, or maybe she was, like, a fling. But for whatever reason, she trusted him enough to, like, move in with him and be like, yeah, I'll be your housekeeper. Again, like I said before, they decided to marry. It was said that Morris was undisturbed by the rumors surrounding Nancy, so
of course he was.
He didn't care that she was suspected of, quote-unquote, murdering a baby. And by all accounts, their marriage was a good one. It was said to be happy. Like,
good for them.
It was a good marriage. In 1813, when Morris was 61, they had a son, Gouverneur Morris Jr., who then went on to be with a long career as a railroad executive. And then just to, like, put some context into it, so they married when Gouverneur Morris was 57. So he didn't marry until he was 57. He didn't hang up that Playboy hat until the late 50s. So in 1888, another very colorful figure in American history, Theodore Roosevelt, wrote a biography of Gouverneur Morris.
I love that.
He wrote, quote, "There has never been an American statesman of keener intellect or more brilliant genius. Had he possessed but a little more steadiliness and self-control, he would have stood among the 2 or 3 very foremost." End quote. But yeah, I just love that Theodore Roosevelt apparently wrote a whole fucking biography on Gouverneur Morris. But he was like, maybe if he controlled himself, he would have been more popular. I'm like, that's rich coming from you, Teddy. But I just thought that was a really fun little tidbit. But now going back to the end of Gouverneur Morris, which this is maybe the most craziest part of his story.
Okay, I'm strapped in. I'm ready.
Throughout the fall of 1816, Gouverneur Morris suffered from crippling gout. And then his pain became even worse when he began to experience a urinary tract blockage. So
Pee after sex.
So, yes. So instead of, going to a doctor for help, which, looking back, what happened with his leg and the last time he went to a doctor, fair enough. But whatever his reasoning, he decided he would try to clear the blockage himself in his urinary tract. Using a piece of whale bone as a catheter, he decided to do some self-surgery. This was unsuccessful and led to further internal injuries and infection. So Morris...
Yeah, of course.
It's just so fitting. Morris passed away on November 6th, 1816, so very shortly after this, in the same room in which he was born 64 years earlier on his family estate, Morrisania, and which today is the South Bronx. And that is Gouverneur Morris.
He died of a dick infection.
He did. Well, he died of stabbing himself in the dick with a whalebone. Let's be honest here. And I'm just like, of all the founding fathers I could learn about, this is the one.
I love this. This was great.
So I had a really good time learning about him. Yeah, it was, so hopefully maybe you learned something about American history.
I love this. This is better than the time that Taft got his toe stuck in the bathtub faucet.
Yeah. I just, every time I was like, okay, so this is cool. This is cool. This is cool. This is how he died. It can't get worse. And then it just kept building.
And then it did.
Gouverneur Morris, cheers.
Okay, so for me, mine is very, very short.
It's fine, because I took a long time, actually.
I did most of my history last week, apparently, with paranormal. So today, we're going to talk about a certain thing dealing with prohibition.
Ooh, fun.
Yes. So in 1919, with the passage of the 18th Amendment, the Prohibition Party got their way when the amendment banned the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors. The law was nearly impossible to enforce because the lost generation of the 1920s did not want to give up their alcohol.
I mean, fair.
Fair. Understand. So when Prohibition went into effect on January 1st, 1920, they simply took it underground. The gangsters who built bootlegging empires and small-time home brewers alike sometimes smuggled alcohol from out of the country into America, but more often than not, they just made and sold their own stuff. They would spend their nights in speakeasies, gangsters would sell their own alcohol, and home chemistry researched. And by chemistry, I mean they...
quote, unquote.
They made their own alcohol.
As they should.
It was no secret that people were brewing their own alcohol, which became known as moonshine, one of the main ingredients being industrial alcohol, which is already incredibly unsafe.
Yeah.
Industrial alcohol, obviously, is not the same thing as drinking alcohol. It contained added chemicals to render it undrinkable. It's more like rubbing alcohol, ethanol,
Shit gets you real fucked up.
Yeah. If you drink it, you could die. Or you black out immediately.
It's like a fun little game.
Some moonshiners would pay chemists to renature industrial alcohol, but the people who couldn't afford that just basically hoped for the best. And with this, the government saw an opportunity. So the U.S. Treasury Department were the ones in charge of overseeing alcohol enforcement. They approved the addition of more chemicals to the process of manufacturing industrial alcohol to make it harder to bootleg. So they would see these people, making their own drinking alcohol out of industrial alcohol, and we're like, we're going to add more chemicals and toxins to it.
As the government is wont to do.
In 1927, the government began adding the toxic compounds to the supply, the most deadly being methyl alcohol, which was 10% of the total product. So, essentially what I'm talking about is the government poisoned alcohol.
Yeah, I have heard about this, yes.
Yeah. That did not stop people from moonshining, though.
Of course.
They continued drinking whatever alcohol they could get, and that decision ultimately was deadly.
I mean, yeah, but also fair, because same.
Yeah.
I would still probably drink whatever I could get. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie. Like,
I
I am a borderline alcoholic over here.
Every time I get home from work, I pour myself a drink. Like, I would not.
Yeah.
The Federal Poisoning Program, which was the actual name, by the way, the Federal Poisoning Program.
I mean...
ended the lives of thousands of people, but given the already toxic nature of moonshine, it's hard to say exactly just how many people died specifically because of the added chemicals versus how many died just because of trying to bootleg industry. Yeah. What is clear is the fact that drinkers started dying by the tens of thousands when the poisoned alcohol went on the market.
Not cute.
No, not cute, not fun, not fresh. According to one calculation, almost all of the 400,000 gallons of liquor confiscated in 1927 was full of poisonous chemicals. Jesus. The government's plan to add chemicals to industrial alcohol during Prohibition was no secret to the public. So they flat out just told people.
So they know.
Yeah, people knew the dangers of bootlegging and did it anyway, and the dry political figures that were in power at the time saw no problem with the government's actions. Basically, since they had told people that they were adding toxins to the industrial alcohol, and people still did it anyway, the government was, like, able to turn the other way and be like, well, we're not at fault. Like, if people didn't want to be poisoned, they should have followed the prohibition laws, basically. And naturally, because of the way that things go in America, the poison alcohol mostly affected the people of the lower class.
Yeah.
The wealthy were able to sidestep health issues during Prohibition. They had good chemists. They were able to renature it. And most of the time, they didn't even have to bootleg and renature everything. They were able to afford the high shelf stuff that didn't have the added chemicals. And more often than not, they would just import whatever they wanted and then pay off whoever was in the way.
Sounds about right.
The lower class was not so lucky. In 1926, 1,200 people fell ill with alcohol poisoning and 400 people died in New York City alone. A year later, that number jumped to 700, and most of them were people who could only afford the cheap, toxic industrial alcohol. Prohibition ended in 1933, but the government did at least slow its poisoning program long before the repeal of the 18th Amendment. When grain whiskey was reintroduced in the 1930s, it was like nothing ever happened. Like, people literally just stopped talking about it. It was like, oh, the government poisoned alcohol, that was a thing, but, like, they were like, at least we have grain whiskey back.
Silly governments.
Yeah, so that's my segment. It literally took like 3 minutes. But...
No, yeah, I mean, it's still good to know.
Yeah, that the government
a lot of people don't know.
Literally just poisoning people.
Which... honestly, not surprising.
Not at all. The government likes to have an input on what people do with their lives.
Just say history likes to repeat itself. It's only a matter of time before we get back to this fun thing.
Women already can't have abortions, and next thing you know, we can't drink.
Yeah.
So
it's fun here.
The government has way too many opinions on what people do in their own life.
I mean, truly. History. So fun, so fresh. It's repeating itself, and it shouldn't.
But I do like history. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, but we don't fucking learn.
I know. That's the whole thing. It's like, the reason we learn history is so history doesn't repeat itself. And whoop.
Oop, we slipped. We fell back 30 years. It's fine.
We fell back like 130 years.
Yeah. I was being generous. But yeah, I mean, that was fun.
I definitely had more history last week than I did this week, but...
But no, my segment went much longer than I expected, so, like, I think it was fine. It was about normal.
So are we ready to spin? I'm getting a drink. We're ready.
I think we're ready. I hope it's nice to us. It's spooky season. Come on.
Give us something good.
Be generous, Will. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Okay.
I mean, that's on brand. That's a little spooky.
Ooh. So what's our topic for next week?
It's mystical.
Ooh.
Fitting into those October vibes.
Yes, and the drink is going to be Brittany's choice.
Yes.
It's going to be a Brittany week next week.
Fitting into those October vibes. Let's go. Man, I've already talked about, like, the 2 things I was excited about for mystical, though. I'm like, what am I even talking about? I've done tarot. I've done Ouija.
We'll think of something.
Yeah, but it's definitely fitting. So, we hope you're into that for the spooky season.
Brittany will get to pick a drink. Do you have an idea of what drink you want to pick?
No, but I haven't done, like, make up a cocktail in a while. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll try to do something spooky. I'm not guaranteeing it, but at this moment, my vibes are there where I'm like, ooh, yeah, maybe I'll try to theme it. So we'll see. Because everything's better in October, so including my mental health. So maybe I'll follow through with it.
My mental health is also better in the fall.
My mental health and my ambition are much better this month. So yay.
Woo! So next week, join us to get mystical and see what Brittany comes up with.
Yes,
So,
and we thank you for listening.
Yes, and if you would like to find the podcast, you can find us at Sip and Spin Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Or if you would like to email us, you can email us at sipandspinpod@gmail.com. If you would like to find Brittany, her ats are Whimsy Dream or Whimsy Dreams. And my social media is GleamYKS. But as always, all 3 link trees will be in the description.
Yes, and as Skylar said in the beginning, we are getting, like, themey, seasonal on YouTube currently, so go check that out for sure. But yeah, we definitely thank you for listening. So
Yes, thank you so much. Hope you have a good spooky season.
yeah, we're vibing, so hope you're vibing as well.
Hope you sip with us this spooky season.
Oh, that was kind of cringy.
It
Skylar
was.
said it.
I did. I was following in Brittany's footsteps.
I'm so proud. I'm not even gonna say anything else. That was all you need.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.